Hey, next on the T Nation, thanks for coming back for part 2 of this week's show featuring my conversations with two-time Georgia PGA Teacher of the Year, Brandon Stooksbury, and head golf professional over at Canterbury Golf Club, Jason Carbone. Now, Brandon is a short game expert, and we're going to get a lot of tips for how to pitch, chip, and putt better from him. He is also just an outstanding individual. You don't become a two-time Georgia PGA Teacher of the Year and now doing a great job over at Metairie Country Club in Metairie, Louisiana, and being sought out by so many people if you're not just an absolutely not only fantastic teacher, but a fantastic person. So excited to have Brandon back as part of the show. Been way too long since he's been here. Jason Carbone is going to be making his next on the tee debut. He's learned from the greats, like a great friend of this show, Jim McLean, has had input into his career, and he has had an outstanding one. When you hear his resume, it's going to knock your socks off. So sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next hour or so. Before we get started, I want to remind you about our friends over at 2 Under. 2 Under men's performance briefs are the unofficial underwear of the PGA, Ryder Cup, and President's Cup teams, and are sold in over 3,000 golf pro shops and golf specialty retailers nationwide. Ricky Fowler is their global ambassador, and over 50 other PGA, Korn Ferry, and Champions Tour players wear them. Just to mention a few, they are David Toms, Jerry Kelly, Justin Thomas, William McGirt, Scott McCarron, and Chris DeMarco. The Joey Pouch technology provides the ultimate male asset management, delivering maximum comfort from the tee box to the boardroom to the bedroom. Go to 2under.com to check out the bundle specials that offer substantial discounts for being a Next on the Tee listener. That's the number 2, UNDR.com. 2 Under, performance in your pants.
Every January, PGA Tour Superstore pros meet every manufacturer, learn about the latest equipment, log thousands of hours of training, and together hit over 100,000 balls. All so they can get you the perfect fit.
All right, now back and next on the tee with me is Brandon Stooksbury. Let me remind you a little bit about Brandon's background. He's from Jacksboro, Tennessee, which is about 25 miles from Knoxville, earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Plant Sciences from the University of Tennessee. He is the head professional at the Metairie Country Club in Metairie, Louisiana. He was previously the director of instruction at Idle Hour Club, a little south of me in Macon, Georgia. Brandon is also the author of a couple of wonderful books, the first titled The Wedge Book, an owner's manual for your short game, which you can get on his website, StooksburyGolf.com, or out on Amazon, where it was a #1 bestseller. His second book is The Next Step in the Process. It's titled The Putter Book, an owner's manual for your green game, available in those same places. Brandon has been named one of the best young teachers in America by Golf Digest. Since 2010, they have consistently named him one of the best teachers in the state. In fact, he was named the Teacher of the Year in Georgia in 2015 and 2018 before he moved out to Louisiana. He is a world-class short game and putting instructor, and I couldn't be more excited I get to have him back with me this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Brandon, Happy New Year, my friend.
Chris, how you doing, man? Thanks so much for having me on. I hope you're doing well.
I am, thank you. But, Brandon, it's been a minute since we got to spend some time together. Catch us up. How was 2024 for you?
2024, despite 100 inches of rain in South Louisiana, 2024 was great. Yeah, we
100 inches of rain.
Yeah, literally, that's not an exaggeration. We got like 99.8 inches of rain, and so we're used to a lot of rain down here, but not quite that much. But despite that, we still played the same amount of golf in 2024 as we did in 2023, despite half the rainfall. So my crew down here are hardcore, and they'll play in just about anything. And so 2024 was a great year.
Good for you. Brandon, I want to get your thoughts because Jim McLean is a wonderful friend of this show. You spent a lot of time with Jim McLean down at his academy at Doral. I'm curious, what are some of the things that you learned from the time that you spent with Jim and that maybe you incorporated into your philosophy of teaching the game?
I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about Jim. I won't take too much time telling it, but it was probably the most impactful thing that I took away from that. I used to spend a lot of time when you're not working. You're sort of expected when you're working for Jim, especially in a young instructor kind of training environment, you're expected to come around and spend your time when you're not working and watching. right? And helping with lessons and learning from the things that are going on. And so even when you're off the clock, you're still there. And I can remember watching Jim give a lot of lessons and being at a place like Doral, which was a still to this day a major resort and running a a top 5 golf school in the world. He would get people from all walks of life, from all ability levels, all across the game. And it was incredible to watch him become whoever he needed to be for the person he had in front of them. Maybe it was an inexperienced or beginner golfer that was a female and he needed to be a little softer and a little nicer, if you will. Or maybe it was a hardcore golfer that he had taught for a while and had a relationship with and needed to be a little bit more forceful and directing in what he was trying to get across. He was like a chameleon. And it really was incredible to watch him become whoever he needed to be that made the best lesson experience for the student. And I took that away. And to this day, I've tried to do that. Now, I'm not as good at it as him. I still have some segments that I struggle with and some that I'm really good at. But that was really impactful and meant a lot to me to watch him do that and to kind of learn that skill.
Brandon, you're such a wonderful teacher. I mean, you don't win PGA Teacher of the Year in a state twice by not being outstanding and great at the things that you do. Talk about what sets you apart. What makes you different than other instructors out there?
Well, I appreciate you saying all those things, Chris. I'm proud of what I accomplished throughout my entire career, but winning that award in Georgia was incredible when you consider some of the names that are on that list, in Georgia that have won that award throughout the years and how fortunate I was just to be included with them now. I appreciate that. But I never set out to become a short game guy or a short game instructor. I was always just an all around instructor. I worked at a golf school in Las Vegas and saw lots of people and taught them lots of different things and just sort of found an interest in short game. Um, to be honest with you, there wasn't really a whole lot of. I set out on a journey to become a better short game coach, and the more I dug for research and learning materials, the less I found in our business. Now, some things have changed now over the last 10 or so years, or maybe 15 years, and there's some more information out there. But when I was just starting to dig in, there wasn't a whole lot to be found. And that ultimately led me to writing the Wedge book and the putter book, which had more success than I could possibly ever fathom. And I'm still blown away today at how they did in the marketplace. But the point I'm making is it sort of painted me into a short game corner. And I didn't like that at first. But the more I taught short game and the more people called me or came to me because of short game, the more I sort of began to enjoy being that guy. And to this day, despite the fact that there's more information out there and there are a few other people in the marketplace that are sharing short game specific information compared to full swing, it's 10 to 1 the amount of information that you can find on full swing that you'll ever find on short game. And so I really enjoy sort of being set apart and being known as a guy that spends a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of effort to be good at short game and to teach things like wedge fitting and putter fitting along with short game instruction. There just aren't many of us. And I enjoy sort of being in that niche now and being known for it.
So let's take that a step further, Brandon. To your point, there is so much out there in the full swing versus short game. 100% with you. And what you talk about wedge fitting. I mean, if you look at just the equipment side, I mean, so much is made of, this new driver and these new woods and these new irons, but it hasn't been until the last few years, in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, that we've really gotten changes in the wedge game. I mean, Bob Vokey does a lot. Cleveland does a lot. But it wasn't always that way. But it was always about different clubs and irons and woods and the changes and all of that sort of thing. But it isn't until just recently, I feel like, that people have really started to pay attention to different grinds and different wedges and actually doing what you just said, a wedge fitting.
Yeah, I hope that's true. I mean, I preach it every day and I talk about it every day, and I do a lot of fitting at my facility, hoping that I can play my small part into sort of pushing us as an industry in that direction. But look, I think you're right, and I think I think it has a few different factors. Number one, there's a business side to it, whether we all want to admit that or not. And a wedge or a putter, from an expense standpoint, um, don't don't hold the same place as a driver or a set of irons. I think that's some of it. The other part of it is the collision physics just aren't the same, right? The wedge is going much slower, the putter's going even slower, and so there's not as much to gain from technological improvements when the club is moving a little bit slower. I think that's been part of it. And then, look, some of it is just exactly what we talked about. I mean, for years and years and years, all the information was on full swing. And so when all the information is on full swing, then people and the community of golf tend to be drawn to the things that improve their full swing. And wedges and putter aren't really part of that. And so I think it's a multi, faceted animal that is sort of living and breathing, that guys like me are out there trying to fight every day and help people understand the importance of those clubs, and how easy it is to really make a difference in your game when you go through something like a wedge fitting or a putter fitting, because to be quite frank with you, most people haven't. And it makes a big difference when it's done right.
Yeah, so let's take that a step further, because I always find it interesting, Brandon. The importance of the short game and putting. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe amateurs like me, weekend warriors like me that go out there and play, the area that we lose so many of our strokes in is we three putt a lot, and we're not that good at chipping and pitching the golf ball. 20 to 40 yards is an awkward area for us. When we get right around the greens, which wedge or which club are we choosing? We don't often make the right choice. And then when we get on, we're making three putts. I mean, those are the areas where we're losing the majority of our strokes, is it not?
It's certainly one of the areas. I mean, look, make no mistake. Controlling the ball to the point where you can keep it on the field of play, meaning not in the woods or not in the water or not out of bounds in the full swing, is hugely important. And lots of people lose lots of shots. Uh, that said, usually some of the lowest hanging fruit lies in the short game. And here's what I mean: it doesn't require nearly as much coordination, talent, um, investment of time and energy, physical ability, et cetera, to move a putter or a wedge as compared to a full swing. So if you gave me the same amount of time on the lesson tee with two different students, and one I could spend getting their short game better, and the other I could spend only working on their full swing, the amount of return on that initial investment in short game tends to be much higher. Now it moves a little bit with the handicap scale, as you get a little bit better in the game, then the full swing becomes a little bit more important. But usually, for most club level golfers, you're exactly right. Lots of shots are thrown away on three putts and missed chips or chunked pitch shots or multiple
Yes.
shots in a bunker. And compared to learning how to hit a driver straight or far or both, it's not too hard to learn how to not do those things with a wedge or a putter.
So I want to talk about the short game and particularly the wedges, because a lot of times, and I know this from watching my buddies when we go play, they fall in love with one wedge. A lot of times around the green, it's a lob wedge, which to me is the hardest club, one of the hardest clubs to hit. So when we are right around the green, maybe we're 5 or 10 yards off the green. Doesn't matter if it's to an elevated green or to a level green. I see so many people pull out their lob wedge because they want to try to hit it nice and high, and that's always fun to watch. And then it settles really soft. But to me, that's the area where you're going to make a lot of mistakes because, to your point, there's a lot of a lot of chunk shots. There's a lot of thin shots, and the next thing you know, you've advanced the ball 5 feet, and as opposed to taking something maybe with a little less loft. I see a lot of people with their wedges kind of getting behind the ball because they want to scoop it. They want to help it in the air. I see other people that have got all their weight on their lead foot. And the next thing you know, they're chunking it or blading it because the leading edge digs. I mean, I see a lot of things out there that I just kind of like scratch my head that people need to come to you and watch your videos and things of that nature to really learn what is the right approach as we are around the green for getting the ball close to the hole.
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes from, and I'm going to throw all of us as an industry under the bus, here for just a minute. I mean, I think we spent so long as instructors, myself included, before I started learning all I did about short game. I think we spent a lot of time pushing short game to the back burner. And so a golf lesson would go something like this. We would work on full swing with a student for 45 minutes out of an hour. And then we're getting ready to start our wrap up. And the student goes, "Hey, I had a little trouble with my chipping the other day. Can you help with that too?" And we end up shoving wedges or short game toward the end of an hour session. And we give it about 8 minutes of thought. And frankly, we just end up teaching as instructors what we were taught as kids by the instructor that did the exact same thing to us, and around and around and around the cycle goes. That's not good. I'm not proud of that. I did that as a young instructor. And when I learned different, I started to treat it with different respect. But I think that happens a lot. And I think that's gotten us to a place where people will try all kinds of weird things, either because they've been told an old wives' tale that really doesn't have any science or research or testing or data behind it. It's just that's what Jimmy told me when I was a kid, that was told to Jimmy by Johnny when he was a kid, and away we go. A lot of it has to do with not understanding how the wedge is supposed to work over and through the ground. Very different than an iron. The clubs are built differently and they're built for different purposes. People don't understand that. It gets even wilder when you get to the bunker. There's all kinds of things going on in a bunker, that are just out of this world, right? And so there's lots of bad information out there without a lot of good information out there. Again, it's gotten better over the last 10 or 15 years as guys. I would like to think I'm one of them, have put some things out in the industry and tried to really, bring everybody up to speed and get them a little on a different page when it comes to short game. But there's just a lot of bad stuff and not a lot of good stuff. And you see all kinds of weird things happening with golfers, to your point. Um, I'll speak just a second to the comment you made about the lob wedge. I think it's about an argument that's as old as time, whether you should use one wedge or whether you should use three wedges. People have different philosophies. I can tell you that most of the guys on tour will use one wedge. But I will also follow that statement up by telling you that that's not what most amateurs should do, in my opinion, for a couple different reasons. Number one, they're the tour. They're the most talented people walking the planet with a golf club in their hand. They can do whatever they want, and we shouldn't use them as an example or justification for us doing it. That would be like me saying LeBron James jumps high and dunks it, so I should try to dunk it on every, shot in basketball. Like, that's crazy, right? But that's what we do in golf. And so the tour is a little different. You kind of set them off to the side. I really think people would benefit from using a multi-wedge system. And here's why. It allows you to change trajectory without having to change how you swing it. And if you compare that to short game or compare that to full swing, that's exactly what we do in the full swing. We have an entire bag full of irons that we make one swing with, and they go various distances and various heights. This game would be a lot harder if we had one iron and we had to adjust how we swung the club to make it go higher or lower or farther or shorter. Why on earth would we make our lives more complicated with a wedge in our hand when we could just use a couple of tools that would allow us to do the same thing we did before, but get a completely different shot? And so that's why I tend to push people in that direction.
I think that's brilliant. So you mentioned the old wives' tale. I mean, for folks listening to this show, they maybe can take one piece of advice with them this weekend or the next time they get out to play. Is there a general misconception? Is there something that you have seen that happens most frequently when someone is coming to you for a short game tip that we are doing wrong that maybe we can give some advice to the folks listening to say, hey, maybe make this adjustment because I see this very frequently that people are doing this incorrectly. Here's one adjustment that you can make to help you hit better pitch and chip shots.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you too, and they're sort of brother and sister, and so they can kind of share the same tip, if you will. You don't hit it high by hanging back, and you don't hit it low by leaning forward. Those are two of the biggest two mistakes that I see people come in with. You know, they want to hit it low. They think about a chip shot being low and running. So they take a wedge, they put the ball way back in their stance, they lean their weight way forward, they lean the handle of the club even more forward, and then they actively try to hit down on it, which is a severely down angle of attack. So you have about 4 or 5 different de-lofting mechanisms going in at one time. And if you can get that ball airborne, that's a big if, it's going to be like a missile. It's not going to have any softness. It's going to come off the face like a rocket and going to have absolutely no spin whatsoever. And you're going to want to, you're going to not understand why you can't control it. And that's even if you can hit it. Most of the people can't even be precise enough to hit it because you've created such a dynamic that you've got no margin for error. That's on the low shot. The flip side of that is the high shot. People think to hit it higher, you used the word scoop earlier, that they should scoop the club under it and they should lean their chest back and make it go up. And that sort of makes some common sense. Like if you're going to shoot a basketball high, you would kind of lean your chest back. If you're going to throw a baseball high, you would kind of lean, backward and throw it in. But that's not how it works in golf. And between those two misconceptions or mistakes, it's uncountable how many shots are given away and wasted on a daily basis around the world in golf.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit because I want to get onto the green and talk a little bit of putting. And again, you've got the putter book and owner's manual for your green game. And before we get into some of the techniques that you teach, I want to help us all feel better because the players out on tour, to your point, who are the best players on the planet, they aren't training every 15-footer that they look at. They don't even make half of them, right? Talk about the statistics. When you really look at it, we're all bad putters.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Like when it comes right down to it, we all, suck at putting. Pardon my language, but and I say that as a joke to get people's attention because here's the fact. Here's the reality. The best putters on earth make half from 8 feet.
Wow.
8 feet is their 50-50 mark. So if you put the best putters on planet Earth on average, now sometimes some weeks they putt really well from 8 feet, some weeks they putt really bad. We're talking about averages here, right? But if you put the best putters on Earth on average at 8 feet, they're going to miss half and make half. From 15 feet, they're about 25%. They make 1 in 4 on average.
Wow.
So
okay.
yeah, the numbers are really surprising. And when I say that to most folks, about half the people are like, that's a joke. That's not true. That's not accurate. And the other half, I kind of have to pick their lip up off the green, right? Because their mouth is open. They just can't believe it. And look, the reason for that is because golf on TV is a highlight reel. You're watching the best players playing the best golf of the week, of the day, of the hour that you're watching. Well, of course, those guys are making a lot more putts. In their average, they're on the upswing. You don't see them when they're on the downswing in their average and they're missing the cut next month because that's not popular TV. That's just how it works, right? And so there's this misconception, that all PGA Tour players are wonderful putters. They are wonderful putters as compared to everyone else, but not compared to making every 15-footer. The numbers just aren't there. And so that's a huge misconception that a lot of people bring to the lesson tee when they say, I need to be better at putting. And I say, really? How so? Well, I'm not making enough 15-footers. Well, first of all, you're not likely to have more than a couple of 15 footers in a round,
Yeah.
as for most club golfers. And a tour player makes 1 out of 4. So making more 15 footers is not the answer for the average golfer to get better at putting. It's just not. And that's usually, um, what's the word? That's surprising to most people when they hear that.
So, Brandon, place that I struggle most frequently on the greens is speed control. And you did a wonderful video that people can actually still watch out on your Instagram page at Stooksbury Golf. Talk about the drill that you share that helps us become better with our distance control.
Yeah, people I think tend to complicate things too much sometimes, and golf is a very athletic motion. And I dare say, this is what I say to most people that come to my putting green and I talk about speed control. If I gave you a football, especially most guys, right, that are kind of have played a lot of football when they were kids, even backyard football, but even some ladies out there, if I gave them a baseball or something, and I said, hey, look, I'm going to start running. I want you to hit me, like throw it at me, and I'm going to catch it. I might run out there 20, 25 yards and I might make a cut. And that person's going to take that football and they're going to look at me for about 1 second, take one step, and they're going to throw it. And chances are, most people, not everyone, but most people will get pretty darn close to where I am. They might not hit me in the numbers, so to speak, but they're probably not going to underthrow it by 10 yards. Or they're probably not going to overthrow it by 10 yards. Well, how do you do that? Like, what systems in your body and in your brain allow you to do that? And I would bet Dr. Winters would have a lot of input on this, but we have a system in our body that calculates distances. It's the same system that when we're on the interstate and we see brake lights, we use that sense to know when and how hard to apply the brakes. It's the same sense that knows when we're walking across a parking lot and there is a curb coming, how we time our steps to be able to, in stride, step on the curb instead of having to make a couple of little shuffles because we timed it wrong. We have that system in us. The problem is we practice that system every day in our lives, whether it's walking across a parking lot or driving a car, or perhaps playing catch in the backyard with their children or buddies or whatever. We don't practice it all the time in golf. And so, really, what people need to do to start the process of speed control is learn how to access those skills that we already have with a putter and a ball in our hand. And the drill you're talking about was sort of designed to do that. And so you put I think you're talking about the towel drill, right? Where
Right.
you put a towel out some random distance away from you. It doesn't really matter what it is, 20 feet, 25, 30 feet. And all you're going to try to do is figure out how hard to hit the ball to make it roll up onto that towel. Now, you won't be perfect at it when you start, but the more you do it, the more you'll start to tap into that sense that we all have. And you'll start to understand the bounce effect of the ball off the face, how to account for that, how to account and feel for the size of the stroke and the speed the putter head is moving. And there are ways that you can set up practice sessions that tap into that and help speed that process up. And that towel was really about being able to tap into that system.
Brandon, just a couple more before I let you go, and I want to talk about reading the green. I can't tell you how many times my buddies and I are out playing and we hit a putt, and one of us says, I thought the putt was going to break the other way. Right? We read the greens wrong. We're completely wrong with how that ball is going to break into the hole. What are some things that we can do to become better green readers?
Yeah, so I will start that by saying I'm an aim point guy, and most of your listeners are probably going to know what aim point is, but it's a system of green reading that's out there, and there are several of us around the country and around the world that are certified by Mark Sweeney, the owner and creator, to teach aim point, and it changed my life as a putter, and I was a pretty good putter before, and it made me a great putter, and so I use aim point as all my green reading instruction. That said, I'll share a couple of things with you that I think people get wrong, whether you're using aim point or not. That I think people need to start to understand. And here's the first one. I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, "Oh, it broke toward the ocean," or "the mountains are over there, and so it always breaks away from the mountains." Well, I got some news for you. The only thing that affects the break of the putt is the ground that your ball is rolling on between it and the hole. That mountain that's 2.5 miles away has zero bearing on how that putt's going to break. That ocean over there to the left, zero bearing on how that ball's going to break. The only thing that matters is that 25 feet between your putt or your ball and the hole. And so focus your attention on trying to figure out what that's going to do before you worry about oceans or mountains. Those are old wives' tales that people have come up with to try to explain why they can't read a green. I just said it, right? I'm
Yeah,
going to offend some
good to
people,
know.
but
Yeah.
I mean that's what happens, right? Like they don't
Yep.
really know how to read the green. But boy, that ocean's over there, so it must be going toward the water because I hit one a minute ago that I thought was going to break right, but it actually broke left. That must be the ocean. No, that's called the slope of the green between your ball and the cup. So learn to focus on that and less on what's around it. That's the first thing I would tell you. The second thing I would tell you is that speed absolutely matters. I'm not going to go as far as saying it's the most important of the three putting skills that I talk about in my book, but it absolutely matters because if you hit the ball too hard, then that affects how you have to read the green. If you hit it too soft, it affects how you have to read the green. If you hit it too hard, then your cup gets narrower. If you put it at the right speed, then you have the maximum width of the cup to play with. And so lots of misconceptions out there. One more, for goodness sake, you don't have to get every putt to the hole. I know that sounds crazy because
It
there's a
does.
100% chance it won't go in if it doesn't get there. We've all heard that one, right? But remember the statistics. The best in the world three putt as often as they make it from about 30 feet, 33 feet. So most of us amateurs outside of about 10 or 12 feet should really just be trying to two putt. And
That's
if
solid
you
advice.
and if you try to get every putt to the hole or past it, you're going to end up with a lot of 6 to 7 footers coming back and a lot more three putts. Now that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. There's a lot more to that, but that's just another one that I hear all the time on the putting green. You got to get it to the hole. Well, when you get out past about 12 or 15 feet, I'm going to disagree a little bit with that sentiment. And so, there are about three things that I hear all the time that I think people could start to do differently that would make a big difference. But green reading is an art and it's a science all mixed into one. And people need a system. They need something tangible they can grab a hold of and work on. And that's why I like Aim Point.
Brandon, before I let you go, let our listeners know how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you're out there doing, get copies of your book, and follow you whether it's online or it's on social media.
Yeah, so as you mentioned in the intro, I've spent the last 3 or 4 years sort of back on the operations side at a very busy place down here in Metairie, and I've let my social media involvement kind of take a back burner. I'm hoping to change that, in the coming weeks and months and years. But everything I have out there is under Stooksbury Golf. My last name is a little hard to spell, but the good news is once you figure it out, there's only one Stooksbury Golf. And so I'm pretty easy to find. It's stooksburygolf.com, my Instagram handle, my Facebook page, my YouTube channel. Everything's under Stooksbury Golf. I got a lot of good videos on YouTube. Some of them are a little old. My hair's a little darker in some of them than it is now. But, I hope to start to reshoot some of those videos, update some of them, add some new videos now that things are a little calmer down here in Metairie, and we've got the golf course open, and I've got my feet under me after a busy few years. I'm hoping to get back to it. So that's where you can check me out, Stooksbury Golf. I'm happy. It's even my email, stooksburygolf@gmail.com. I'm happy to talk to anybody and converse with them and help them any way I can.
Well, Brandon, I can't thank you enough for coming back and being a part of the show this week. I hope you'll do it a lot sooner this next time around, and that's on me. But I can't thank you enough for everything that you shared with us tonight. You're fantastic, my friend.
Chris, it's always a good time, and congrats on your success. Keep the pedal down. You're making a difference, and we're all thankful for it. So thank you for letting me be a part.
I appreciate that very much. Take care, my friend. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you, Brandon.
Bye.
That is the great Brandon Stooksbury, folks. And again, the spelling of his name is Stooksbury. So StooksburyGolf.com is where you can find him online. And again, go check out those books. The Wedge Book and Owner's Manual for your short game. You can get that on StooksburyGolf.com or out on Amazon. And then the second book, the Putter Book and Owner's Manual for your green game. You can find those there as well. Brandon there's a reason why he is a teacher of the year, and I hope you got a sense of that during the course of the conversation. He's just one of the great instructors that our game has ever had, and the way that he presents the information is fantastic. You go out there and you look on his YouTube channel, and you're going to understand why as well. The way that he presents things is easy to understand and then go replicate when you're out on the practice range, or you can take it out to the golf course with you. Like I say, it's been a minute since we had the privilege of having Brandon as part of the show, but I promise you, I'm going to have him back on the show much sooner this next time around. Okay, coming up next in segment number 4 is going to be Jason Carbone. Jason is the head golf professional over at Canterbury Golf Club in Beechwood, Ohio, and his resume is one you're not going to believe. But before I bring Jason on, let's talk about our friends over at Squares Golf. And folks, do you sway and you're off balance in your golf swing? You know what? It could be your shoes. A golf shoe needs structure to provide stability and reduce sway. How can you tell if your shoes lack structure and are hurting your game? If you can hold your shoes by the toe and heel and twist it, toss it. Squares was designed for the perfect balance of structure and comfort. Isn't it time you tried Squares? Try the new Speedbolt at squares.com. That's SQAIRZ.com. All right, now making his next on the tee debut with me is Jason Carbone. Let me give you a little background on Jason. He played his college golf at Bowling Green, where he'd lettered from the 1994-95 season through the 96-97 season. He helped them to a second-place finish in the MAC Championship in his first year, 94-95, and a second-place finish at the 96-97 Ohio Collegiate Classic and Rutherford Invitational. After college, he has been the director of instruction at great places like Muirfield Village, at the Jim McLean Golf School, Baltusrol, Woodland Country Club, and now Canterbury Golf Club. Plus, he also did an internship at Inverness. I don't know how it gets any better than that, folks. Jason also continues to play at a very high level. He won the 2023 Northern Ohio PGA Professional Championship. Just last month, he was named the Teacher and Coach of the Year for the Northern Ohio PGA Section. And I couldn't be more honored. I get to have him with me this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Jason, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, Jason, you sure have had an amazing career to this point, and we're going to get into the details about that here in a minute. But I want to kind of go back to the beginning with you. When did golf first become a game that you wanted to play?
I was super fortunate. My dad had, a club in my hand at 2 years old and or a bat. So anything I could swing when I was little, I was in. I loved baseball, loved golf from day one, basically. Played them both through high school, and then kind of realized I didn't throw hard enough to really go much beyond high school with baseball. And thought maybe if I put 100% into golf, we could see what happens from there. So started really early and just loved both sports from day one.
So as I mentioned in your intro, you got to play your college golf at Bowling Green. I have to imagine you had a pretty successful junior golf career leading up through high school and then your opportunity to go play some college golf. And I also have to imagine there was more than Bowling Green vying for your attention. Who else were you looking at, and how did Bowling Green ended up winning out?
I mainly narrowed it down pretty quickly to Michigan and Bowling Green, and most people hear that think, why Bowling Green? I loved Michigan. I was maybe a little delusional, thinking that I might be able to play for a living down the road, if I really, stopped playing baseball and focused all on golf. And the coach at the time was Greg Nye, who since been moved on to Penn State. But I thought he was going to be able to really take my game to another level. So that was a big part of the decision. I just thought it was actually going to be better for my game, and probably a little narrow-minded in my focus. Probably should have been thinking a little more about academics at the time. But everything works out for a reason, and couldn't be happier with the way it all turned out.
And you guys had a very competitive squad, highlighted by that second place finish in the MAC championship your very first season. Talk about your time at Bowling Green. What are some of your favorite memories and the things that you got to be a part of while you were there?
It was great. We had really just a good group of guys. My captain, my first year, Gary Winger's just been a close friend forever. He was a great mentor, Canadian golfer that was really talented. We had a few good Canadians on the team, and that was probably one of the highlights early. There was that MAC championship was at Firestone. And I had one bad round. I shot 72 the first day, the 36-hole day, and played really well. And then shot like 85 or something the second day when I kind of realized where I was. And then shot 72 the last day. So quickly learned that the mental game was lacking early on in my college career, and would probably need some work. So yeah, it was fun. We got to play a lot of great golf courses. We played, a pretty good Big Ten schedule, playing at, Ohio State, Michigan State, and those kind of events at Michigan. Beautiful, phenomenal Alistair McKenzie golf course. And so yeah, just had a blast. The people were amazing. And then those were the people that really helped me kind of land my first job at Inverness, working outside right out of college, which kind of set up everything from there.
So, at what point did you make the decision that teaching was the direction that you wanted your career to go in?
Yeah, I think pretty early on. I mean, I loved, I think when you don't realize that your mental game's holding you back, you think it's all technique. And so, I was hit it okay, never a great putter. And so you just start studying and figuring out what can I do to get the ball in the hole. And so you're almost on a teacher's journey without even realizing it. Probably similar to a lot of guys' story, really. You try and figure it out through technique rather than some of the other things that make people great. Um, and so when Coach and I left, the coach was a super guy that they brought in, but wasn't quite uh, as at the same level as Coach and I was in terms of technique and shot making and short game and things like that. So we almost kind of taught ourselves and taught the rest of the team, and just loved it. Got to Inverness really early, and the head professional there, David Graff, was just a great mentor, and knew I had kind of a passion for teaching even from college. And I was so fortunate, my second year there, to meet Jim McLean. They knew that, I wanted to learn as much as I could. And so when an opening came up there to go down and do an apprenticeship and work under him, I mean, I jumped.
So let's take that a step further. And I want to go back to your time at Muirfield Village here in a minute. But Jim McLean has been on this show many times. He is a wonderful friend. Talk about your time down there with him and what you learned from him that you have now incorporated into the things that you teach your students.
Yeah, Jim's the best. If you're gonna go, want to be a teacher, we always say it's like going to get your master's and your doctorate down there. His training program, just the way that he puts his heart and soul into the training process. Those staff meetings were just some of the best memories I have of kind of trying to learn, my path into teaching. Um, and pretty much, I'm not sure too many lessons go by where I'm not quoting something from Jim to this day. So, the things that he does are just, he'll tell you 50 years of research um, put into, a system that allows you to teach different players of all levels and all types. So yeah, pretty much everything I do today has some um, pathway back to Jim and the golf school down there in Miami.
A couple of years prior to that, you spent some time at Muirfield Village as the director of instruction. How'd you catch on there? Talk about your time at Muirfield Village.
Yeah, so kind of the way it went, I was doing Inverness and Doral, north and south in the summers and winters. And then it was just kind of, the chance to learn a little more, um, be around some different people. And of course, anytime Mr. Nicklaus's name's attached to something, it tends to pull you in that direction. And so, I always, Mr. McLean was so supportive and helpful. When I told him that Muirfield might be an option, and so went there and ended up doing, what things went so well, and Larry Dornish, just unfortunately passed away too early, but another great mentor helped me get down to the Bears Club in the winter. And so I was doing Muirfield, the Bears Club, and, it felt at the time and even to this day felt like, I learned under Jim McLean, in my mind, one of the best to ever do it. And now I get to be around the best to ever do it. And Mr. Nicklaus and his whole family that were just wonderful people. And Eric Vayu down at the Bears Club and Larry at Muirfield. Again, it's just so fortunate to be around those people that are legends in the industry and also just care a lot. So they're always going out of their way and making sure that you're on the right path and the path that you want to be on.
Jason, Jack is my golf idol. I absolutely
Yeah, me too.
adored that guy
Yeah.
forever. It sounds like you might have had some opportunities to spend some time talking with Mr. Nicklaus. What was that like?
It was, yeah, maybe probably the best, experience I've had ever. He was, very, very kind, asked me to just take a look leading up to like the '04 Masters. Just hadn't seen Mr. Flick in a little bit, and was just looking for another set of eyes to bounce some things off of, and asked me if I had some time after lunch one day, and of course, I was gonna drop everything. Didn't matter what I had.
Yeah, no doubt.
Probably went home that night. Well, I know I went home that night and reread, Golf My Way for the 14th time, just to make sure we're speaking the same language. But got to spend, a couple hours with them a couple days in a row. Just talking through some basic stuff and jumped on the course with them a little bit in that stretch. It's just, memories that I'll never forget. I've never seen somebody in practice lock in on a target the way that he did, and hit a golf shot with that much intentionality, effort, focus. It's just, I've never seen it. Got to watch Tiger on the range at Muirfield for the Memorial and things like that. And, maybe if you were right up close, maybe it would be really similar, but I've never seen anything like the way Mr. Nicklaus would practice.
So was there a piece of advice? Was there something that you gave him, a little nugget that might have helped improve what he was doing?
We just talked some setup. Basically, I had thought that maybe he was getting, a little bit away from who he was, a little more rounded up in, the upper thoracic region, always kind of played that way. And I thought maybe he was, trying to be a little more classic. I put in quotes, in his setup and things like that. So, I put him and Hogan kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum, and both, maybe the greatest to ever do it. But we just talked a little bit about, his setup and allowing him to be more upright, being a little more rounded and softening up, that upper thoracic region, and just super basic stuff. And then just, had some great conversations about how he thinks about shots and how he approaches his pre-shot routine and things like that, which were just awesome. He was teaching me really.
Um, After your time at the McLean Golf School, you spent 10 plus years at Baltusrol, one of the most historic courses in our country's history. What was it like being the director of instruction at a prestigious country club like that?
It was amazing. I hadn't spent a whole lot of time in the Northeast, and you hear how amazing the golf is there, and they're not kidding. But really, Baltusrol is really special because the people are absolutely amazing. The membership is just so caring, and it really wants to know how you're doing and what can we do to make your day better. When all of us employees are trying to do the opposite and make their days better. So you just truly appreciate that, and and then the leadership there, from the general manager, Mr. Vitale, and the head professional at the time was Doug Steffen when I first came in. Those two guys were always trying to figure out what else I needed. It's a neat time to be there because they were building the learning center, and that's when they were hiring the director of instruction. So, we got to be there kind of from the ground up and build, have a vision and build what we'd want to see. And then it grew into a whole other fitness facility that's just spectacular. And so you just really trying to build that culture of um, even though this range may not be your classic driving range because it's quite uphill, um, and they had to get a little creative with how they could make some room, that we could be one of the premier learning centers, especially in private facilities. And we felt like we were. We felt like we were the best private facility learning center, as well as short game areas, everything included. We weren't sure we could find one that matched us. So to have the support from the leadership to be able to execute on that vision, and then now to turn it over to Matt Wilson, who's done just an unbelievable job. I mean, it just says a lot about what a special place Baltusrol is.
And that was obviously a place that Mr. Nicklaus had a lot of success during his playing career. Won a couple of
Yeah,
U.S. Opens there in 67 and 80. They've
yeah,
hosted so many major championships on that property, including the PGA Championship when you were there in
yeah,
2016, which
yeah.
Jimmy Walker won, and the 2018 U.S. Junior Amateur. Talk about what is it like being at Baltusrol during a week in which you are leading up to a major tournament being held there.
Yeah, very cool. You learn all the behind the scenes stuff, and how much credit, um, like in that case, the PGA of America or USGA, but in that case, the PGA of America, how much credit they deserve. How being on site for like 2 years ahead of time and basically building a city within the gates. All the details that are thought of, but it's almost unrecognizable when you walk in that week of the event, compared to what you're used to. So, the amount of volunteers and manpower that it takes to put that on is truly remarkable. So yeah, it's super neat. It's super neat watching the best players in the world, take on a course that so well, and see just how good they are. And even the junior, and I mean, my gosh, what a cool event! There were so many members that thought it was one of the best events we've ever hosted. The fact that you could get so close to these players, it's just absolutely amazing, and how talented they are, is really fun to watch. And then that you're going to see them not too far down the road, which in this case we are. Michael Thorbjornson's just a stud, and we're going to see his name a lot. And Akshay's already proven. Those were the two finalists in the junior am when I was there. Akshay's already proven, how he can perform at that highest level. So to think about where they were then and how good they were, you just knew that they were, they're going to be on TV and not too distant future.
From there, you go on to Carmel, Indiana, at Woodland Country Club. It was originally designed by Bill Diddle. Pete
Mm-hmm.
Dye comes in and redesigns it in 2002. Looks like an absolutely amazing track from the videos and the pictures that I saw. Talk about being there.
Yeah, it was a neat transition. My wife's from Indiana, and really wanted to get back to the Midwest, back towards both of our families. and got an opportunity. The head professional there, now director of golf, is Patrick White, and Patrick's become a really close friend, someone that I have the utmost respect for. Potentially of people that I've seen, literally one of the elite golf professionals in America. I'm not sure if enough people know about him and how good he really is, but I would put his skills up against anybody's in the country. And so had a great relationship with Patrick, gave me a lot of freedom to teach and do the things that I wanted to do. And also, kind of work within kind of the family dynamic. Our kids were starting to get a little older, and it just gave me some flexibility to be home a little bit, and for my wife and all of them to be back around grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles and things like that. So, forever grateful to Patrick. Spectacular, yeah, really great golf course. And they keep getting better. They just actually built a learning center that came out wonderfully. And so whoever kind of ends up there in this next phase at Woodland's going to be really happy.
And here you are now at Canterbury Golf Club outside of Cleveland, a club that's been around for over 100 years. It's the only club in the country to have hosted a U.S. Open, PGA, Senior U.S. Open, USM, and a Senior PGA Championship. Talk about the history in this great club.
Yeah, so it's amazing how all the people that you meet along the way, you just, never know when they might come full circle. And I grew up about 10-15 minutes from here. I went to high school not far from here. Went to high school with the now honorary Caddy Masters kids. Mike Kiley's been a legend here, the Caddy manager for over 50 plus years, and now his son-in-law Trey's taken over. And so we always kind of looked up to Canterbury as like this just absolute gem in Cleveland. We were so honored, if we got the chance to come out here once or so a year in high school, and all of a sudden, when the opportunity came to kind of get back to my home, and then especially a place as special as this, really had to jump at that opportunity, and haven't regretted it for 1 minute since. So again, amazing membership, amazing golf course. From the superintendent to the general manager, all the way down to leadership here is wonderful, and have a lot of support. So to be able to kind of walk out of the office to look out the scenery. Never quite expected in Cleveland the amount of terrain and the shot making that's required here at Canterbury. But that's just part of the fun every day to be able to look at that, and occasionally to get out there and see if the game still holds up on it.
Jason, looking back at all of these fantastic places that you've been at, all have an incredibly rich history. There have to be legendary stories about those clubs and the legends who played there over the years that people have shared, still talk about when you're sitting at the 19th hole or sitting around just at the club talking to different people, different members. What are some of the favorite stories that you've heard about those legends being out there on the grounds where you've worked?
Yeah, I think so many. I think a lot of them, of course, I mean, just because of my history, a lot of them go to Mr. Nicklaus for my time at Muirfield, and then also, thinking about Baltusrol, and then to here, having him one here as well at Canterbury. So, things that always jump out. I've heard him in an interview say that he's never hit a 1 iron harder, or it's the hardest 1 iron he's ever hit was the 1 iron on the 18th hole at Baltusrol where the plaque sits.
Right.
And sitting there looking at that plaque and the shot and thinking about the equipment he was using at the time, it's just I can't even wrap my head around what it would take to pull that shot off, and the amount of talent and skill. So things like that. I remember being at Muirfield when he played his last Memorial tournament, um, and he's coming up 18 on Friday, and he's I'm going to get the story wrong. He's either even or one under par, and he doesn't want one higher, and flicks a shot out of the bunker, and he's got this putt that you just know that he wants to close, to kind of close his last memorial the right way. And he had to stand over that thing forever for, almost 20, 30 seconds. And in the beginning, you're almost a little uncomfortable, like, boy, he's over that a long time. And then another 10 seconds pass, and you're like, well, he's just not going to miss this. I mean, this is it. Like, he's just that locked in. And of course, right in the middle. So, those kind of things are huge memories. I still love the story again because, you've been there, you can kind of picture it. Mr. Nicklaus playing with Peter Jacobsen. Jacobsen actually tells the story in his book where he's young, might have even been a rookie on tour. And they're on 14 and Jack's making a charge in the Memorial. And, Jacobsen's in there tight and Mr. Nicklaus has about 20 feet. And Mr. Nicklaus goes over to him and he says, do you want to go first? And Peter's looking at like, why, are you crazy? Like, you're away. And he goes, well, when I make this, people are going to go crazy and you're going to have a hard time putting. And it just hit him thinking, when I make this, like he just knew ahead of, and of course makes it, of course, crowd goes crazy. And of course, Jacobsen misses. So, to be like those kind of stories. And again, they go back to Mr. Nicklaus, just, maybe it's just my affinity towards him and his family, but just story after story about what an amazing player, person, family man, ambassador for the game. I mean, you could go on and on with the list.
Jason, you mentioned Firestone early on when you're playing there in college. And like I mentioned in your intro, you're still playing the game at a very high level. Back in 2023, you started out section play being paired with Nick Myers to finish 10th at the Pro Premier, played there at Firestone. Talk about that event and talk about what it's like to play Firestone for all of us that wish we had that opportunity.
It is. It's special. That was where my freshman year Max were. And Nick was a teammate, my best man in our wedding. Been a great friend for a long time. So it's great to be back in Northern Ohio and then to team up with him in particular. And then to go back to Firestone, where our first freshman year MAC championships were. In this particular event, we played both North and South, which is just a treat to go those two back to back. The South is just everything you'd want out of a test of golf for the best players in the world. It's a lot of golf course for me now at this stage. And the North is just so enjoyable. I think you hit just about every club in your bag, the views, the shot making that's required, the terrain. Just absolutely can't say enough about the North course and just Firestone in general, the whole facility. I remember going there one year when Inverness was under construction, and so got a little bit extra time off, and got to go watch the World Series when Tiger won in '99, I believe, and watching him down the stretch, pulling out that victory, right when he was about to go on this just epic run. Some of the shots and swings and being able to get up close to him. So I have a real soft spot in my heart for Firestone. Absolutely phenomenal place, and would highly recommend if anybody does get the chance. I would play both if you do get the chance to go there. And I've heard great things now about what was the old West course now. That they put some money into that, and that one's exceptional. So 54 great holes there. So I would try and spend more than one round there if people got the chance.
And Jason, throughout that 2023 season, you had several top 10, top 15 finishes, culminating with a win at that Northern Ohio PGA Professional Championship, a tournament you nearly won the year before in 22. Talk about going to Metairie Country Club, which looks like a beautiful Donald Ross design there in Canfield, Ohio. But talk about getting that win.
That was fun because I hadn't won a major in any of the sections I had been in. So that one, it was extra special. It was extra special kind of to do it, with the membership of Canterbury kind of behind me, and you want to do something, for them because they had been so good to me up to that point in every day since. So yeah, that one was extra special. You go in not really knowing what kind of game you're going to have before the 22 and 23 section championships. Just kind of the day or two before, try to find a key where I could at least get the ball in the middle of the face and have some sort of predictable curve on it. and then really, a lot of credit. I used to be a poor putter. And in 2019, I got a putting lesson from Daryl Kessner in New York. And ever since then, I haven't been great, but I've had good, and I've had some good events too. He really kind of saved my putting, and turned me into a decent putter where I could get some good weeks going. So tons of credit to him, where I was able to qualify um, uh, for the club pro, national club professional, in 19, and then also in 22 and 23. So a lot of credit to Daryl, really just getting my putting out of, out of the doldrums there. And so in 23, yeah, wonderful golf course, just kind of fit my eye. Really difficult greens, and so the putter was key that week. And anytime I have kind of one of those weeks with the putter, I just always think about Daryl.
So yeah, let's take that piece a little bit further. Speaking of fitting your
Yeah.
eye, I read that you were on fire in that tournament during the second round. From holes 6 to 16, you played that stretch in 7 under par, 4 consecutive birdies on holes 9 through 12, another one on 14, and you didn't have a putt from anywhere outside of 12 feet, and a couple of them were kick-ins. Seems like you were in that rare piece of being in the zone, if you will.
Every once in a while, yeah, every once in a while. Again, I think going back all the way to that freshman year Mac, as you get older and you start thinking about some of the things that held you back, and you realize how bad the mental side of the game was for me. Jim McLean would always talk about the 25% theory when he's analyzing players, where 25% short game, 25% long game, management game, and mental game were all equally weighted. And there was no doubt that putting and short game were a weakness, and the mental game was a weakness. So as you get older and you start learning about the mental side of the game, so you can apply it to your students, I think a lot of it's helped me become a better tournament player. Where I can catch some of my old mistakes of possibly getting ahead of myself or anxious, um, and kind of use some of the skills that we've learned along the way, to help me with my own game, which is kind of nice that it can help both students and myself.
Now, you also finished tied for 10th that year at the senior Northern Ohio PGA Professional. People in the section, boy, they had to know if they saw your name in the field, you were the guy to beat.
I don't know, but there's some players here that have been doing it for a long time. Again, starting in this section back in '97, and now coming back in 22. Pretty neat to see some of the names that I looked up to back then. Just absolute stud players, and the Tom Waitroviches and Rob Moss and those guys. Those guys have been doing it here for a long time and super successful. So, yeah, just happy to come in and be able to kind of represent Canterbury appropriately. When you think back to, again, not even close to the caliber that like a Henry Picard was when he was the head professional here, but just the fact that playing is important here, and being able to represent the club properly on the golf course is important here. And when you know that you have that kind of responsibility, I think you go into each event maybe a little more focused. And it's important that you don't want to misrepresent the club at all. So, at the same time, I think that's probably helped push me a little bit. And it doesn't hurt to walk out to this gigantic putting green and know it's rolling at whatever number you want to put on it, 10, 12, I'm sorry, 11, 12, 13. It's not a 10, I can tell you that much. And know that, you're going to get some, even if it's 10 minutes of practice, that you're not going to face much harder wherever you go for your next event.
Jason, just a couple more before I let you go.
Yeah.
And I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and this show is available on the Pittsburgh Tribune review site in the sports section. So I got to ask you, being in the
Yeah.
Cleveland area, you're just down the road a piece. Have you ever crossed over the border into Western Pennsylvania and played?
I have played Oakmont once. I thought it was the hardest and one of the hardest and one of the best places I'd ever been. Absolutely spectacular. Got to walk the Open there too when Els won. So been there a couple times, only played it once. I got to walk Fox Chapel with a student and absolutely fell in love with it. It just looks absolutely amazing. Wanted to hit a shot just about everywhere we went, but was teaching and could only walk it, but absolutely spectacular. And so we've got some members that are here and at some places over there. So we hear so many good things. But those two really stand out because I've actually been on property at both. I know there's 100 others that are absolutely phenomenal, but those two are really gems. And yeah, Oakmont, it's going to be so fun to watch the Open this year. I can't imagine how hard it's going to play.
Are you going to head over at all to check it out?
I would like to. It's a tricky time of year to get over there. It's kind of start of main season for us, but potentially, yeah, I would like to see it live and see how it actually plays. So yeah, hopefully it's such an easy drive. Hopefully that works out, even if it's for, a half a day or a full day.
So as you look ahead out across 2025, what are some of the things you're actually looking forward to?
I'm actually super excited for playing this year. I guess don't mean for it to be a shameless plug, but I have 13 new clubs coming from Callaway, and it's one of the first times I'd ever done that. I played like the same shafts and similar heads for a long time. Tend to kind of stick with a driver for a while. But got fit and the stuff is just so good. So I'm actually kind of super excited because I think I picked up a little distance through the equipment. So excited for that. Excited for our tournament calendar here at Canterbury. I think we've got the events kind of spread out well along the calendar, so we can really put our heart and soul into each one of them. And I'll tell you the other thing that's really kind of exciting. We've got 3 kids, and the younger 2 are really kind of asking about going to the simulator and picking up the game a little bit. So always super excited whenever they want to, either come here to Canterbury or go somewhere to hit some golf balls. And that seems like that's starting. So I think that might be one of the highlights of 2025.
Ah, good for you.
Yeah.
Jason, before I let you go, how can our listeners stay up to date with you and follow you, whether it's online or it's over social media?
Yeah, I probably need to do more. I don't do a whole lot. My wife keeps telling me I should do a little more. So, but it's J Carbone PGA on Instagram. Um, and that's really the one. If I do post anything, it's typically on there. But a lot of times, because most of my teaching's been at private facilities, especially as of late. We do a little bit less of that and just kind of keep things private within the walls here, but still have some access to people outside of the gate, and that would probably be the best way.
Well, Jason, it's been great having you as part of this show this week. I hope we get this privilege with you again sometime soon. I'd love to catch up with you a little bit later on in 2025.
100%. If you're ever over in Cleveland, I know sometimes those Pittsburgh people don't like venturing this way, but if you do find yourself this way, please reach out. Let me know. I'd love to get some golf in with you.
I'd love that as well. I've got an aunt and some cousins in Little Italy there in Cleveland.
Oh,
So,
perfect. Yeah, great. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me on.
absolutely. Thank you. All the best to you and your family, Jason, we'll catch up soon.
You got it. Thanks.
That is the great Jason Carbone, folks. I mean, look, if he played resume poker with anybody and they were telling you if it was a bluffing game and he started coming out with all of the great places he's been. I mean, Inverness, Muirfield Village, Baltusrol, Woodland Country Club, and now over in Canterbury. I mean, I think they would say he's bluffing. He's a liar. There's no way you went all those places. I mean, that is an unbelievable resume because he's an unbelievable teacher and player. I mean, look, he may discount what he did, from a mental game perspective, but when you look at what he did when he was there at Bowling Green and what he helped that team achieve, and then he goes and he's a director of instruction at all of these wonderful golf courses, and now he's turning it on. He's out there playing in the Northern Ohio section, and like he said, he wins a major over there for the PGA section. I mean, this is a tremendous instructor, a tremendous player, and you heard during the course of the conversation what a great guy he is. So I can't thank him enough for being a part of the show and sharing all of these wonderful stories. And I'm serious, having him back on later in the year, I'd love to pick his brain a little bit more about the time that he was there at Oakmont and what he saw and what it was like. I mean, look, we've heard about the legendary greens there from a lot of people. Our good friend Bob Friend Jr., who's a member there. Our other good friend Bob Ford, who obviously was there for many, many years as the head professional. But to hear it from, guys that have come in and had a one-time opportunity or played it 3 or 4 times and know what it's like to get on those greens. I mean, a lot of these guys are going to be playing in the U.S. Open this year. This is going to be kind of their first look at playing the U.S. Open on a place like Oakmont on those legendary greens. And they've done some course redesigns there over the last year or two. So I'd love to get Jason's insights on what it's like to be there, tee it up, and then trying to putt those greens. So hopefully we get that privilege maybe a little bit later on in the spring or towards the summer. But great guy, great opportunity to have him as part of the show. I look forward to catching up with him again soon. All right, my friends, it is time for me to put a bow on this edition of Next on the Tee. My sincere thanks again go out to Tom Patry, Dr. Bob Winters, Brandon Stooksbury, and Jason Carbone for joining me this week. Scheduled to join me next week are a wonderful friend that I met last year at the PGA Merchandise Show, fitness expert Courtney Weber will be back to help us with all of those New Year's resolutions. Another one of the great players out there on the Champions Tour, and a guy that I root so hard for each and every week, Rob Labritz, will be back. And then making his Next on the Tee debut is going to be top instructor Paul Horton. And Paul is one of the most decorated instructors in the history of Canada and a just tremendous person. So it's going to be a really great show, folks. I hope you'll come back and be a part of it with us. I want to thank our friends again over at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review for hosting this show on their site. For coverage of everything going on in Western Pennsylvania, including your favorite sports, go to triblive.com. You can find this show by then clicking on the Sports Section tab, and the most recent episode is going to be right there on the homepage of the Sports Section, front and center for you. Or if you click on Sports and then Podcast Network, you'll see the Next on the Tee logo. Click on that, and then many of the episodes now, obviously this is the first for 2025, but you'll see some of the ones at the end of 2024 available for you there as well. You can also find this show pretty much anywhere you get your podcast content, including on Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Player.fm. And as always, my thanks to the great folks over at Good Pods for making this show one of their recommended podcasts. So please download their free app and stream your favorite podcast right there on your favorite device. But like I say each and every week, my sincere thanks go out to all of you for making this show what it is and for being the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.